guys! So the promised mural video. I was posting pictures of a mural I was doing with my second grade and a lot of people had questions, so I figured let me make a video and I'll go over the project and how we did it, and then you guys can ask any questions you have still left in the comments section and I'll go ahead and answer them afterwards. So it was a big project. It was 62 students working on it and over 100 tiles. Because the students were so young and the time is limited in the class, as you know, by the time they come in and they settle and they have to clean up, so you have like maybe 25-30 minutes of working time. There were parts that I did and then there were parts that the students did. So let me first tell you what the tools were that we used, because I know a lot of you guys are doing budgets right now, so that you can budget for those if you want to do this project. It was not a very tool-intensive project, which was nice. I used a cookie cutter to make the tiles so that they were all the same. I think I bought it on Amazon, and I used a 7x7 cookie cutter. You can do other sizes, it doesn't have to be that size. You can do 5x5 or whatever, you decide. Basically, I took a look at the wall where we were going to mount the mural, and I saw the space that we needed, and I figured out like how many tiles I wanted and the size of the tiles that I wanted. Just aesthetics, I wanted slightly larger tiles, but not too large so that I could still work with them easily. So I went with 7x7 and I figured out how many tiles that was, lengthwise and widthwise. And then we did use a slab roller. I highly recommend that you have a slab roller for this project because it's a lot of slabs. Your back is going to hurt if you have to roll out all the slabs by yourself. So the cookie cutter, the slab roller, your clay. Please be aware that if you're mounting the project outside, you want to use a body that has a low absorption. So you want to do stoneware, if not porcelain, for the outside. If you're hanging it inside the school, you may be able to get away with low fire clay. And then your glaze, your underglaze, paintbrushes and sponges. That's pretty much it. I did use this tool that I have. This is a diamond core tool. It's like a loop tool, but it's pointy at the end. And I used it to score the tiles. The reason why they have to be scored is so that when you cement them onto the wall, the serrations, the cement like flows into them and it keeps the tile on the wall better. Especially if you're mounting it outside. That's really helpful. So let's talk about how we actually did it. So at the very beginning, I made the tiles for the students because I figured they want to do the fun parts, they want to do the sculpting and the painting, and they're really young. They're like 6-7 years old, so I figured that let me make the blank tiles and then we can work on doing pretty things with them. So I took my slab roller and I started rolling out slabs of stoneware clay. So I would roll out a slab and then I would use my cookie cutter and I would cut out as many tiles as I could from that slab. And then I would take, so this is a sample tile, I would take my scoring tool and I would cut grooves into the tile this way and this way. And then I would flip it over and store it. And I have to talk about storage with you guys because this was the biggest challenge for this project. We had the classes, so we have like 2A, 2B, and 2C, right? There are 20 students each. And they each only had one art class a week, which means that we had to keep storing this project from week to week and keep it wet so the students could keep working on it. And that started on day one. So as soon as I made the tiles, I had to keep them wet so the students could sculpt onto them the following day. So the way I did it was, we have a rack, right, with those wooden boards, like the wooden planks. And so what I did was I took the wooden rack and I covered it with plastic. And as I was making the tiles, I was putting them on the plastic. And it ended up being like a 3x6, right? So little sections of the mural. So I would put the tiles onto the plastic, and then when the board was full of tiles, I would cover it with a damp bath towel. So not soaking wet, because you don't want to introduce too much moisture, but very damp bath towel covering the whole thing. and then another plastic on top. So wooden board, plastic, tile, damp towel, another sheet of plastic. And we did this every time we had to store it for the next week. It was that actually took a lot of time. So be prepared, it's a lot of work. But so I made all the tiles and I put them on those wooden racks. And then the following day when the students came in to work, we lined up the wooden planks side by side on the tables so that they could actually see the whole entire mural. So it was in sections, but the sections were, like side by side, so they could see the whole thing. And right before they came in, I was working with a very talented art teacher, Lisa Pincus, and she drew the manatees and like the sand. And so the students came in and I gave them each a bowl of clay. The clay was pretty wet, so nice and soft clay. And I told them to make little bowls of clay. And we filled in the manatee and we filled in the sand with little bowls of clay. And then what we did, actually I think I had to store it. And then the next week, what we did was they went and they smushed the little bowls that made up the manatee. So they smushed it into a smooth surface. So it was really, really important to keep those tiles wet from week to week, because obviously they wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise. So they smushed in the manatee until it was smooth. They smoothed over all of those little balls of clay, and on the sand part, they left them alone. So now we had two textures going. The manatee was smooth, and the sand was still like pebble-like. Now, I will tell you, when they did that, they of course like merged the tiles together. So at the end of class, I had to stay over and I had to recut the tiles. I had to like separate them. And then, so that was week 2. And then week 3, what we did was we did seaweeds. So I taught them how to like make leaves. So we made lots of coil snakes and we made them flat. And then we like laid them out. And then they learned how to make coral. If you guys need me to make a video on actually making any of those things, you let me know. But basically a lot of coiling, a lot of making snakes. And then for the coral, they would like cut off the end of the snake and they would poke it with a pencil in the end to make like that like sponge look. And then they took the pencil and they would like stab it 1,000 times to make all of those little dots. And so when they did that, they kind of merged the tiles again. This time it was a little bit better, but the weeds were like continuous from tile to tile. So I had to also make cuts right in between the tiles because I guess I could have told them to like stop at the end of the tile and restart on the next tile. But like I said, my kids 2nd grade, I felt it was easier to just let them make that long seaweed and I would go after the class and just section it off in between the tiles. So that was week 3. And keep in mind, in between each of those sessions, because it's all sculpting, so the clay had to stay wet. So we did the whole thing where we kept it on the plastic and then wet bath towel over that and another sheet of plastic week to week to week. It's helpful to lightly mist your whole entire project with like a Lysol spray or bleach because it will get moldy. A lot of the 2nd graders, they get skeeved out by that, and it's probably not the best like health-wise. So we did that and it worked pretty well. And then, so when they were done with sculpting the manatee, so they did the little balls of clay and they sculpted the manatee and they smushed that and they sculpted the sand and then they put in the seaweeds and then we like made sure that we still had all the individual tiles, so we cut it all up. After that, we were ready to dry the project. So to dry the project, we really had to weigh it down because of all the weeks that it spent, being in and out and like students working on it. Of course, it's trying to warp now, right? So what we did was we filled pillowcases with old rice, and we would have like the plastic and then the tiles and then the bags of rice on top. You can do cat litter, you can do sand. I've seen people even do like they lay the tiles side by side, and on the corners, like where they all meet, they would put like a can of like glaze to just weigh down. So you just want to weigh down like the corners basically. But I ended up weighing down the whole thing. I was fortunate enough that I had access to some old rice, and I could do that. So we dried it for like a week, and then it was dry enough to handle. And what I did was I took it off the board, and I took a new board and I covered it with, this time, a dry towel, and then I placed the tiles on a dry towel and I weighed them again. So now it was drying evenly. So I had a cloth underneath and rice on top. So it was drying between a towel and the bag of rice on those wooden racks. So then we dried it for another week. And then I bisque fired my clay to, I used Iceman Stoneware, so I bisqued it to cone 06. Definitely go slow, because you're going to have varying thicknesses, you don't know how exactly dry it is. So preheat for like 6 hours at least, and fire very slowly. So then we got our bisque tiles out, and what I did was I put in, I covered like all the parts that had sculpture on it. I covered it with black underglaze and I wiped it off. And then when the students actually came in, I gave them like tiles that looked like, so this is obviously a mug, but it looked like this. So it had like black underglaze wipe off. And I gave them the whole entire mural that looked like that, and I gave them underglazes. And what they did was I told them use sponges, fingers, paintbrushes, whatever you want. And they colored it in. It was almost like a coloring project, you know, with the outline, because it was the black underglaze wipe off, it looked like a coloring book, you know, and then they took the underglazes and they filled it in with color. I did dilute the underglazes because I really wanted to go for that watercolor consistency, you know, I didn't want it to be like really bright solid colors. Because I was gonna do something else to it afterwards, I'll explain what. So I diluted it like probably 50-50 with water, and I had it in like little plates for them, and they went to town, and overall they understood that the water had to be blue and the plants had to be green, but I told them to go wild, you know, so the plants had a little bit of yellow and brown here and there. You know, I thought that was like their creativity part, like that was their part, and they could go crazy and like make it as much of themselves in a project as they want. So they went ahead and they applied the underglazes to it, and then I went ahead and I adjusted a little bit of their work, because like sometimes I would have, because different students would work on different tiles, so I would have the manatee, they decided was going to be purplish, so I would have like purple tile, yellow tile, purple tile. So sometimes I had to like kind of like wipe off the yellow a little bit and like make the whole thing purple, so the whole entire manatee would be purple. But so maybe like an hour or two of work there after class that I had to like even out the colors so they would look semi-normal. And then what I did was I took glazes. I did not have the students glaze because I figured that their parts, their contribution would be the underglaze with the colors, because they understand this as painting. These are really young students. You know, with glazes, like the colors are not true colors. Like you will have like your gray and your green, they both look the same. So I didn't trust the 6-year-olds to really like be able to discern the colors and do the right color in the right spot. So I glazed for them. What I used was Amico celadon glazes. So they're translucent, meaning that whatever underglazes the kids did under them would actually kind of show through. So I felt that that was a good compromise between like the student work being visible and then me just making it look decent on that. So I went ahead and I applied my celadon underglazes I used all different colors. So I had like the green, and I had the blue for the water, and the gray for the manatee. And I applied it right on top of their underglaze work on the bisque tile. And then I went ahead and I fired it in glaze firing. And that was pretty much the end of the project. I will post some finished pictures later, but that was basically it. So the biggest issues were by far the amount of time that the students had to work on it. So that left me doing some parts of the project after hours, as well as just really like the problem with keeping the clay wet from week to week to week as they were working on it. Once it was bisque fired, it was a lot less of a problem, you know, because then it's stable and it's not warping on you and it's not a problem. But those first 3 weeks, like 3-4 weeks while they're still sculpting, that was really hard. Like I really struggled. I had to check the clay like every couple of days. I would peek in there and make sure that the towel was still wet enough, you know, to keep it damp. So that was a lot of work. But overall, I felt like it was a very manageable project. It was doable, you know, the kids were young, but they did great. And I would definitely encourage you guys to tackle it and be brave and just leave yourself a little bit of time, knowing that you're going to have to do some of the parts of the projects for the kids, just kind of the prep work, so that they can do the fun parts. If you guys have any questions at all, go ahead and ask them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them. I'm sure I missed a whole bunch of stuff, but I'll fill you in as best as I can. Have a wonderful day and take care. Bye-bye.